So we've got another first impressions coming your way. And this is an exciting wing for me to give you first impressions on. It's actually a wing that my brother just bought. And it's a Dudek Nucleon 4 22 meter. This is actually the first wing that I've done a first impressions on the trike. And I don't know that I'm going to do that from now on. I also do know that any full reviews I do are not going to be on the trike. They're going to be foot launched just for sake of consistency in numbers, drag, weight, all those types of things. But I'm excited to bring you this first impressions. So just scrolling through the Dudek website here, you can see just some of the basics about the wing. And the wing is actually in the salsa color scheme, which is really nice, really bright, stands out well. So definitely like that color scheme. So like I said, it's a 22 meter, so that gives us a weight range of 120 kilograms as a standard weight range, and then you have an advanced or experienced weight range up to 135 kilograms, which is interesting. But here are all the numbers. You can look through all this if you want, but like I said here, we've got a max takeoff weight for experienced pilots and then a total takeoff weight in kilograms. So something a little different there. And you can see here they have a note stating that the canopy significantly changes its behavior with increasing wing loading. The greater the loads, the greater the skill and concentration of the pilot are required. So basically, the more you load it, the faster it's going to be and the more agile and reactive it's going to be, which is pretty standard. One thing I do want to discuss is here in the manual. So one thing I always try to do before flying a wing is to take a look at the manual and just see if there's a recommendation that you should not use the brakes when fully trimmed out. And when you scroll through this manual, you can find here, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can actually read it better. It mentions here trimmers in the 3-speed settings. Here it is. So it says that in a cross-country flight, it is strongly advised to correct your direction with the tip steering handles. In this way, you are steering with the wingtips only, that is, by the outer part of the steering system, like in tip control line design. Such steering affects the reflex profile the least so that the safety remains guaranteed while steering is effective. So that doesn't say that you can't use brakes when you're trimmed out. And so we actually reached out to Dudek to try and see if there is a specific point in the trim range that you're not supposed to use brakes anymore. I won't go into it verbatim, but essentially what they said is that there is no exact point on the trimmer which says that you should stop using your standard brakes. They provided a description about how the steering is affected in different speed modes so that you will understand how it changes the profile of the wing. And basically they say the faster you're traveling, the more you should resign from using your standard brakes. They also mention that the mark of when you should stop using your brakes is when the tension increases on your brakes. If the tension is high, you will not be able to control the wing comfortably with the normal brakes. But essentially, if you're not sure when you should stop using your main brakes, then just assume that if you're trimmed out or using your speed bar or both, that you should just use your tip steering. So with that confusing description of when you should and should not use your brakes based on your trims, we're taking off fully trimmed in, and a majority of this flight is fully trimmed in. We do trim out, and when we do, we use the tip steering. But on our launch, the wing came up nice and easy. You can definitely tell it does want a little bit more airspeed than some of your slower wings, so be aware. But it was nice, smooth, stable, and had good lift on the launch. The other thing that I noticed immediately is that the brakes are a bit lower than I'm typically used to on a lot of other wings. I know that Dudek primarily has the Nirvana Rodeo as their paramotor, which is a high hang point unit, so they tend to move their brakes a little bit lower to accommodate and adjust for that. So if you've flown quite a few different wings but never flown a Dudek, that's one thing that you may notice. But the other thing you will notice is that Dudeks are rock solid, locked in. They feel like they're on rails, and it just feels like nothing could ever affect you in the sky. Dudeks are confidence inspiring. They deal with turbulence extremely well. They cut through it, and they really are safe wings. So as you may be able to see, this wing has a 2D tie-in, but it also has a separate tip steering toggle. It's unique to this wing as far as I know. Unless there's another wing out there that has it, you guys can let me know. But as far as I know, Dudek is the only one doing this, and it's a pretty unique feature. As for the brake feel on this wing, it definitely requires a relatively light pressure to get a nice turn with it. It's not quite as light as the 18 meter RPM flow that I have, but I think it is lighter than the Luna, so take that for what it's worth. But the wing definitely feels very maneuverable, agile, playful. It's a fun wing to fly for sure, but it's not intimidating or overbearing or twitchy. It's confidence inspiring, like I said. The wing has good climb rate, good flare authority, a lot of lift for sure. You're not going to be able to see it very well in the video, but I did do a quick oscillation test just to see how that went, and trimmed fully in is the only time I did the test, but we had between 3 and 4 oscillations and it was completely gone. It's definitely a very roll stable wing while still being agile and fun to fly. So the next thing that I did was trim the wing out, and one of the things that I noticed is it definitely picked up a good amount of speed, but as you can see right here on the lines, the brakes definitely rose up a lot higher when you trimmed out, and that completely changed all of the tensions on all of the lines. So before you could see a large loop on that tip steering toggle, and now that almost all of that slack is gone, and the main brake lines are also a lot tighter when you're trimmed out. So I probably would not recommend shortening the brakes on this wing. Also, you can definitely feel a bit more pressure in order to turn the glider, even with just those tip steering toggles. And I wasn't super aggressive on them because they're not really meant for that, but you definitely do feel a little bit more pressure there. Another thing that I really appreciate about Dudek gliders is the ease of trimming them back in. There's so many wings that I've flown that the trims are super heavy to pull back in, and it lifts you out of your seat trying to pull your trims in. So One thing that I've found so far with Dudek is they do a great job at making the trimmers easy to pull back in.
Alright, let's see if we can land this sucker. We're gonna come around one more time though, a little high. I like this wing though. Nice. Woo! Alright. There was our first flight on the Nucleon 4, 22 meter.
We'll film it. Turn, pull, turn. Good. Perfect. Nice.
And that was our first impressions flight of the Dudek Nucleon 4 22 meter. And with a greaser of a landing to top it off. And my closing thoughts on the wing. I would highly recommend it. Everything about this wing so far I like. I don't think I have a single complaint. The risers are a little bit busy with the extra tip steer, but if you don't want the tip steer toggles, get rid of them. If you're gonna fly trimmed out a lot, keep them because it works better than pulling on the line itself of the tip steer like I always do. So I would highly recommend the wing for sure. And hopefully we'll have a full review of it coming soon.